So I had a coping mechanism and I was buying in that stereotype of maternal role, which is a set of bias and discrimination that working women experience, being viewed as less proficient and capable when we become mothers. So I really wanted to demonstrate that I can be successful in both. And it could be very basic, like in a business meeting where I was heavily pregnant and a colleague was trying to help me and taking my very big and heavy bag. And my response was, no, I can handle myself with my big bag. Thank you very much.
He was
So
a bit like, oh, okay, angry pregnant woman.
Hello and welcome to Make It Work, the bi-weekly podcast where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their career paths whilst putting family first.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Make It Work. And today I have a special guest. She's Anh Bourcet. And Anh is a Vietnamese-French mother to two kids, 14 and 11. So going into the teen zone. And she has lived in Europe, Asia, and now close Dubai, her home for the past year. So Anna was really interesting to me when I found out about her profile because we share a lot of intersections in our professional lives. For example, we're both in healthcare, we were both in corporate before, and most close to my heart, and I believe is also in her heart, she's a strong advocate for female leadership in what is quite a male-dominant industry, especially in senior leadership in healthcare. And has a really interesting story where she's worked through the corporate ranks and after almost a decade, she struck on her own and went on to be a speaker and a university lecturer on healthcare market access. And very recently, she just returned back to corporate life in a large pharma MNC. So very excited to hear about, all these different transitions that she's made. And I know that it will be really relevant and very practical for a lot of us who are thinking about, what it could look like to start out on your own. Is it still possible to go back to corporate, things like that. And also, I will be chatting about a book that she has written about women in healthcare. And she's written a very specific chapter in the book that relates to her growing as a mother and her identity as a mother, reconciling it with her professional identity. And that's something we will definitely dig deeper into. So without further ado, let me welcome Anne.
hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for welcoming in your podcast. I think it's a really great podcast that is sharing and supporting each other within the network of women leaders. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, please tell us about some of your highlights of your story in 2 minutes or less.
Thank you. As you mentioned, I am French Vietnamese, so born in Vietnam, but grew up in France. And I have been a passionate market access leader in the healthcare, where in the past 16 years, I have been able to navigate diverse healthcare systems across many continents and diversities of landscapes. So my career has always been driven by one single purpose, enabling patient access to innovative solutions, whether in the industry, which is developing these innovations, or as policymakers and regulators. And that passion has led me to become a public speaker, as you introduced, but as also as an author, but beyond all, a proud mother of two. And, I have been able to balance these different roles, and that journey was only possible with my supportive partner who has his career in finance and has given the family that flexibility to embrace new opportunities and pursue big dreams, including accepting to uproot himself from romantic parents to come to Asia and now to Dubai.
Amazing, everything. Yeah, I love how you have a blend of so many experiences, both culturally and professionally. Like your family was an immigrant, right, to Europe, to France, and then your children also grew up in Asia, even your husband's French, and now you guys are calling a third place home. I'm sure that's colored a lot of your experiences. So I would love to hear, what in all these changes, what has been like constant things to your rhythm and keeping you sane?
So one thing that I really try to keep is always really carve out time for yourself, either relaxing. For me, it was reading and reading books. At some point, I was so driven by work that I didn't have time to read and thought that I wouldn't have time to read. But actually, I was feeling so stressed that one day I just dropped everything, went to a bookstore, and then took a book out of the shelves, and things from then went much better. So actually, if you think that you don't have time for yourself, it's the opposite. Carve out time for yourself so that you actually can have time to be more efficient at work. And the other thing I think is going to be quite important is also take care of your health. And many of us will have desk-bound jobs, and we don't think a lot on the impact on our back. So a very good friend of mine have introduced me to Pilates, which is really good for to strengthen your core and your lower back. But beyond yourself, I think, think about your partner also was really very important for your well-being overall. And I always have regular date night with my husband. That is a staple that we have had before we had kids, and we still maintain it even after kids. And I know that, just after giving birth, this may be the last thing that you will want to think about, but that is absolutely important and that has helped to keep our relationship really happy.
It's so good. Just curious, what kind of genre of books do you gravitate to?
I love reading different types of books, mainly novels and classic. But what I really enjoy, and that probably comes from my upbringing, as you said, I have been in so different cultures. I love to explore the different novels from different cultures. So, as you know, a Danish novel, I have just finished a Danish novel. And that is a really eye-opening for me to, even though I'm French, I was not very much aware of all the intricacies of how Danish culture works and being really honest and brutally honest. And, there are so many new things that you can learn from just reading the literature from different countries.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I cannot think of a Danish book that I read actually. So, yeah, tell us the name of that book and I will go and check it out.
Yep. It's called the Copenhagen Trilogy. So very, very much easy to find it. And
Okay.
I know that it's a classic.
All right. Okay. Thanks for that hot tip. Yeah, I think it's funny because I just read this stat you mentioned about exercising and keeping healthy because I think in the US, they've done a research where they say women compared to men have actually a significant amount of exercise deficiency. I think probably on the whole, we probably aren't exercising as much, but women compared to men exercise like maybe something like 20 to 30% less than men because of the house chores and looking after the children and they try to do something and then the kid interrupts because the kid tends to go to the mall. So it's a fact that women actually exercise less. And it's so important I found to keep my sanity. So I want to hear a little bit about this process of transitions that we touched on earlier, corporate to self-employed to now corporate again. Yeah, talk us through and bring us back to the times when you were going through these different transitions, especially in different countries too.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that it was one of the hardest times of probably my life where, so for family reasons, we have decided to leave the beautiful shores of Singapore to embrace the sun in Dubai. And with that transition, unfortunately, my role was still covering Asia Pacific. And although I was doing some back and forth, it was not sustainable in the long term. So I had to take the very difficult decision to resign and leave the position that I was in, which is a senior leadership position in a very big pharma and healthcare company with really a very interesting challenge of establishing that market access function that I'm really passionate about. So really professionally, it was really hard, as well as, the colleagues that I have worked with and the network that I was embracing. So it was really difficult. And when I find myself without a business card, that was when the reality hits and the fear of really who am I without my title, the company that I work for, then who am I? How do I simply introduce myself when I go to a networking event? So that was really, really hard and forced me to go into really some soul searching, deep dive analysis of myself. And through this introspection, I have been able to identify then what am I known for? What value do I bring to the people around me, to society, and in the sector that I love, which is healthcare. And that is where I found my strength in understanding how the healthcare system really works, who are the key influencers and deciders, and understanding the key drivers for patients to actually being able to access these health innovations. And what really helped me in that development or rediscovering of myself is through my network with the ex-colleague and other people that I have worked with and who has been so supportive in helping me identify what value I actually brought to them. And they were the ones who encouraged me to embrace that self employment work, which I wasn't at all considering at the beginning. I was really thinking I should be finding another job in another big company. But through the encouragement of my network, I was able to actually feel confident to create my own freelance consultancy work. And through that, I actually ventured into new realms that I have never thought that I would be going into, which is writing that book, creating a course with the National University of Singapore. So something that if I haven't made the jump, I would never thought that I would be able to do that. And that only comes with identifying on myself, establishing on who I am, my brand, instead of relying on me belonging to a company or a bigger structure.
Wow, that's amazing. It reminds me a bit of that Ikigai framework where you're asking yourself, like, what you like to do, what excites you, what value does the world derive from what you do? Yeah, talking about that, can you tell us, do you follow any framework? Do you talk to any coaches? When you talk to your network, what were the questions you asked them to help and all these things that were in you, just that you had to really take some time to do that digging?
I have to say that it's not an easy process and I didn't have a playbook when I started it. It was very organic in terms actually it was very much guided by my network and my friends and colleagues who really highlighted to me what value I have brought to them. And it was very much around driving change, having that clear vision on how we can help patients beyond just looking at the day-to-day work, bringing different stakeholders, players in the ecosystem together. So I think it was really organic, and I am really grateful for all the friends that have helped me through that. And if they are listening, they would know that I'm really grateful for them. Yes, in terms of the different questions, for me is really if they think about me, what comes to their mind? And in their work, where do they see me being able to add value and help them elevate and go to spaces that they would not think about and that help them really go beyond what they would be normally doing.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful to just go back to those who've worked with you and who know you and can vouch for your work, right? To be able to say what is the value that you bring and what you've helped them uncover even through your work. So yeah, thanks for that. That's really, really helpful because sometimes I think networking can be pretty daunting and going back to your old colleagues might even be a little bit of awkward situation, right? Because sometimes people just feel like, oh, you're just asking me for a job, right? So yeah, these are really great and practical handle.
Yes, you've touched a very interesting and really great point that I really took this attitude of discovering myself and just going with an open mind of learning and spending time with my friends and ex-colleagues in at work to understand what they are really doing, what inspires them, what do they want to do, and how do I come into the picture in all that instead of trying desperately to get a job. And through that is how I was able to add much more value to them and actually being able to get some of these consulting projects that I would never otherwise would have to if I was doing a very typical sales pitch of myself.
Great, great. Yeah. So I guess that's step one, kind of going back to your own context to rediscover yourself And then you go home, do your homework, reform who you are, your values, put it out there. And then what? The next step isn't easier. I don't think. How did that look for you?
So pretty much as you said, it instead of going out with my sales pitch after getting the branding and the complete set of services that I know that I can offer, I went instead of just trying to understand what do my network would be worried about, would care about, and what they want to achieve. And then how by listening to them, I can maybe help them and support them. And naturally, things will fall into place. And this is where also some interesting projects can come in the picture that really aligns with your values. So that's also another thing that I found really important is not to take anything, but really something that really aligns with your expertise and your values.
Right. Amazing. And you did your consulting work and your lecturing work for, would you say, about a year or more?
Yes, about a year and a half.
And what
Then
brought you back to corporate life?
again, it was interesting how life would reward you when you least expected it. Because I was definitely enjoying my freelance and lecture time, but then this offer came from a very big pharma company that is undergoing a very interesting transformation journey to become really a great leader that is addressing one of the biggest public health issues globally, and no one has the answer to how we can address that in a sustainable way. And that's how I came back to the corporate world.
And I'm sure the time that you spent on your own and doing the work that you did as a consultant helped you to build your brand and probably open doors. Would you see it that way?
Absolutely. And it has opened up my eyes also in terms of what do I want to do and what kind of legacy do I want to be. And for me, it's really about the patient and how we can help the healthcare system so that we are really future proof for what's going to come for us and for our children, because populations are aging, we have more diseases and chronic diseases and many other ailments that currently our healthcare systems are not catered for. So that's definitely very interesting. And I would say that the skill sets that I have gained through my freelance work has enabled me to see much for the bigger picture. That there are so many other players who can help in that work. It's not only limited to big pharma companies who has the shoulders to do it, but you also have many other players, the startups who has brilliant ideas and who
Mm,
wants to do more than what you think. Digital
yeah.
health plays a huge role, and they also are really getting active in the healthcare ecosystem, as well as the other sides from the policymakers and public health work, where they would be also very keen to help us and the ecosystem.
So, Anne, thank you for sharing all that. You mentioned earlier about the different moves to different countries was precipitated by work and family decisions. Can you share a little bit about how you and your spouse, both having, very demanding careers, how do you work out kind of who takes on the front seat or the driver's seat of where the family goes? For example, you shared about how you all had to move to Dubai and that cost you in a sense with you having to leave your work. So can you talk through a little bit of that, of how you'll navigate that?
So it definitely wasn't easy, but that's where the relationship with your spouse is so important, because it's in the end a common decision that we take together based on what we want out of our career as well as our personal life. And the first move where we had from France to Asia, that was really both of us were looking forward to discovering the new world. And, it was my husband who got the first most interesting offer, and that has brought us to Asia. But life was really great in Singapore, and both of our career took off really well. And that's where we took the decision to stay and build our family. And it was really a marvelous 12 years where we have really grown so much personally as well as professionally. But then it came to a time where it was important for our kids to learn about new environment and new cultures, what we got ourselves from being exposed to different countries or regions. So that was what compelled us to move. And that's have driven us to go to other shores, even if it means that you have to sacrifice your in that move. So I think it's really a balance between what you value and what stage of life you are. And that's also a very interesting concept that when you are at the early stage of your career, you don't necessarily, maybe in your career path, there might be other choices that you might want to take instead of just climbing the corporate ladder.
Mm, yeah. And I've started to move away from that metaphor because I realize it's something that I had to unlearn that it's not higher is better. Well, at least for myself, when I was attaching so much value and when it wasn't looking like it was progressing upward, that way it hit me really hard. So it's definitely an opportunity to kind of re-examine the values, which I did. But I wanted to hear if you had any regrets or anything you would do after all these changes.
Well, I don't think that there are things that I would do differently in terms of our decisions to move, even if it means a trade off. Obviously, it actually helped me to go beyond what I was thinking that I would be capable of doing, because that last move to Dubai enabled me to really embrace myself and be so more confident on who I am and who I am as a leader and how I can contribute to society and people around me. So in that aspect, I have gained such a confidence that whatever happens, I can really shift from corporate world to self-employed, back to corporate world without any issue, and if a better leader than I would have been if I have stayed in the corporate world, and maybe back again in the self-employed world without any fear of risk that I might not be finding another job. So being confident and peaceful with whatever life throws at you, because then you always learn from these challenges.
That's really encouraging. Really appreciate you just sharing that personal experience. And I can see that you've gained a lot through the ups and downs of having to make all these different decisions. So right now, I would love for us to transition to talk a little bit about the book, Women in Healthcare, and specifically your chapter about motherhood. So tell us a little bit about it. Yeah, that's right. Journeys of women leaders pushing boundaries in Asia and healthcare. We will also have promo codes for listeners to get a special discount on to purchase this book. So feel free to check it in the show notes. For now, let's talk a bit about what was the inspiration and what was some takeaways from it.
Sure. And thanks for your interest in the book. It was written to showcase the journeys of women who navigated the evolving landscape of leadership in Asia and in healthcare. The origin of that book was very interesting because, exchanging to learn and support each other was what brought the authors of this book together. So the women leaders in healthcare Asia community. And we found that it was really by that exchange and learning from each other was empowering. And we wanted to share that same empowerment to other women who might go through similar situations in this book. So it's not a recipe book, but it's more about a sharing of feeling that you're not alone and that some of us have gone through similar challenges. And this is how we have managed the situation. Maybe it's not the best way to do but it was our personal way to manage these situations. And hopefully it can shed some light on these real life practical experiences for readers to find their own way to break through these barriers and be empowered in their leadership journeys and inspire each other. I would say that there are two things about the key themes of this book is healthcare and Asia, right? So first, I think that although there are many books or speeches and writings on the topic of women empowerment and women leadership, there are not that many in healthcare and in Asia. So why is that? First of all, although healthcare seems to have many women, such as nurses, for example, but if you look closely, there are not that many who are at the senior executive board level of leadership and C-suites. So that means that there is still a big gap and glass ceiling for women in healthcare. And then Asia, where it is still a patriarchal region with very specific expectations of women to take care of the house and the children. But it is a region that is evolving, and that's where it is difficult for women in that space to find their identity, to strive both to meet the expectations from their society to be able to make a career. So that's where this book was written for.
Yeah, thanks for that. I want to zoom into your chapter on motherhood and your professional identity. I think what you touched on about the cultural expectations and the desire to want to break the glass ceiling really comes through in this quote that stood out to me. So you said, I didn't realize at that time, but I started to reconcile my newfound identity of motherhood with my professional identity. I was in the beginning of my career, eager to prove myself and driven by the idealistic ambition to change the world. And you go on to say that motherhood in no way would impact my work and performance. And I was careful to separate the two lives. I avoided talking about my children to my colleagues, and this behavior is called by researchers as recategorization. So this quote kind of stood out to me. I thought it was very interesting, and because I don't think men generally respond this way, but I personally have experienced it in some way or form when talking about my work or even when I'm interviewing, because I'm afraid of what the perceptions of my capability would be as a result. So would love to hear your take and what you got out of your experience.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to share this topic in my chapter because it was a time where I felt most vulnerable. But at the same time, I appreciated now looking back how much I have grown from the experience. So as you said, I had a coping mechanism and I was buying in that stereotype of maternal role, which is a set of bias and discrimination that working women experience, being viewed as less proficient and capable when we become mothers. So I really wanted to demonstrate that I can be successful in both. And it could be very basic, like in a business meeting where I was heavily pregnant and a colleague was trying to help me and taking my very big and heavy bag. And my response was, no, I can handle myself with my big bag. Thank you very much.
So it was a bit like, oh, okay, angry pregnant woman. Thank you.
Exactly. But then, it was slowly that I came to realize that Korean motherhood may not be conflicting or opposing forces. And through some discussions, especially for a great mentor that I had at that time, she shared with me how she has involved her son in her professional experience and sharing with him. And so I started thinking, indeed, what I am doing in my professional life can help in my parenting and the opposite. So, learning to manage different desires from the kids who want their food right now, immediately, how you manage that and how you talk them through and help them also to grow themselves, being autonomous, being able to, go to the loo by themselves. These are some of the professional leadership skills that I have gained in terms of helping my team develop themselves, gain new skills. And then the other way around, which is my motherhood skills, the skills that I gain by being a parent can help also in my professional life, being more empathetic, learning to listen to your newborn who doesn't even speak and understanding what your baby would need is something that is very actually useful in professional life, especially when you work in Asia, where people may not be straightforward in explaining and article and telling you what they need or what they want, and really being able to listen and look at additional cues to understand exactly what the person is thinking, how the person is feeling when you present your project or your strategy. So these are really interesting skills. And I felt that both roles can really lift each other instead of trying to separate.
Yeah, that's so powerful that you shared that insight. So if you were to go back in time to your younger mom self, what is something you would tell yourself?
Probably don't be so hard on yourself and embrace both identities. It's not going to be easy and you might stumble from time to time, but both experiences are going to be so enriching and just embrace them all together because whatever you learn in one role would be very useful for the other and just helps you elevate the other role. So definitely don't be too harsh on yourself.
So true. I do think we are our worst critics, and something that I constantly need to counter with that is that of looking on the bright side and being grateful for things that are there, but I just don't see. So I feel like practicing gratitude has also definitely helped me to, I guess, take a bit off the edge of when I don't feel that I'm measuring up either way, and it's so hard. But yeah, that's been a big learning for myself too. So with this, Anne, I would love to hear if you had, any message for listeners to take away from your story of transitions and self-discovery.
If I might say, yes, with this little chat about transitions, whether it's transitioning from your corporate world to self employment or transitioning from a highly successful young professional, single, to now taking care of a family and managing motherhood. What I would like to leave as a message is hope, which is a framework that I have proposed in the book to define your own path and make your own rules, actually. So, hope, HOPE, H is to heal the divide. It's actually not a separation, whether you're self employed or corporate. You run from both variants. It's not a choice between career and motherhood. You can have both. And actually, by blending both, you can really grow. And that's really the O of opportunity to grow. Raising children is great hands on leadership learning experience. Finding your brand and your true value is so powerful so that when you're back to the corporate world, you know where you stand and how you can contribute. And you can really show your value within a very short time because you know. Then P in hope is to prioritize according to the life or career stage. You need to be flexible. Sometimes it's better for you to leave corporate world because that's where life leads you to. And also maybe this time is not a good time for a family, but maybe later. But it's not too late either to have a family a little bit later. So don't be harsh on yourself on that. It depends really on where you are and what stage of life you are. Don't try to have children because biological clock is ticking if you're not ready. And then lastly, E, the last letter is to enjoy the journey. Very much don't be harsh on yourself because there's only one childhood and, for you to experience it, one child for you to educate and grow with. So really take that opportunity to rediscover yourself, recapture the energy and the curiosity with your child, with your transition, whether it's in corporate or self-employed world. Take all these challenges with a smile and with always that mind, the open mind to grow and to.
I love that. Thank you so much. And with that, I leave everyone on a very hopeful note here. Thank you so much, Anne, for your time. And listeners, please check the show notes for a special promo code to get the book with a discount on Amazon or Springer. And see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to Make It Work, where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their careers whilst putting family first. Please help others discover the show by leaving a review and rating on wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. Meanwhile, here's to you, making it work.